Millionaire receives a letter from his late wife. The truth inside leaves him shaking. The sun was warm outside, but Alexander Grayson felt cold inside. He stood by the window of his big glass house, looking at the trees. They moved gently in the wind, just like they did on the day she died. Today was 5 years since his wife Eleanor passed away. Alexander had money, cars, and buildings, but none of it mattered anymore. He missed her smile, her voice, her warm hand in his, but he had been too busy when she needed him most. Now he lived with regret, every single day. Then the door creaked. His old butler, James, walked in slowly, holding something in his hand. "Sir," James said, "this was meant for you. She gave it to me before she passed. She told me to give it to you 5 years after her death." Alexander's heart skipped a beat. It was an envelope, yellow, a little torn at the edges, but the name on it was written in Eleanor's handwriting. Alexander sat down. His hands were shaking. He opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a letter, one single page. The first line made his heart stop. "If you're reading this, my love, then it means you're finally ready for the truth." Truth? His chest felt tight. "I know I left without saying many things. I was scared. But now, I need you to know something I could never say out loud. Something about me, about us, about what I hid, and why." Alexander blinked. He held his breath as he read every word. Tears filled his eyes. At the bottom there was an address. "Go there, and you'll find the part of me you never knew existed." The letter ended, but Alexander sat still. He stared at the address. It was in a small town, Willow Creek. He had never heard of it before. Why did Eleanor send him there? He folded the letter and held it to his chest. He didn't cry much in life, but today he did. James stood by, quiet. "Should I prepare the car, sir?" he asked gently. Alexander nodded. The car moved down long roads. Trees lined the sides. Alexander sat in the back seat, holding the letter. He remembered Eleanor laughing in the kitchen, her favorite song playing in the background, how she danced with no shoes on. He had missed so many moments. His heart hurt. "I'm sorry," he whispered, to no one. "I'm sorry I wasn't there." The driver, Lucas, looked at him in the mirror. "You okay, sir?" "No," Alexander said, "but I will be." The sun was setting when the car stopped. The house was small, blue paint, a white fence, very different from his tall mansion. A woman opened the door. She had Eleanor's eyes. She looked surprised. "Can I help you?" she asked. Alexander stepped forward. "My name is Alexander Grayson," he said. "I think my wife left something here." The woman froze. Her face changed. "Eleanor," she whispered. "You're Eleanor's husband." Alexander's heart began to race. The woman stood frozen. Her voice was quiet. "I'm Clara." She looked about 30, dark curls, Eleanor's exact eyes. Alexander stared. "Did you know my wife?" he asked. Clara nodded slowly. "She was my best friend, my sister, really, in more ways than one." Alexander frowned. He never heard Eleanor talk about Clara, not even once. "She told me you might come one day," Clara whispered. "Come inside." The house was warm inside, small, cozy, full of life. Clara walked slowly into the living room. She pointed to a photo on the wall. It was Eleanor, but not the version Alexander knew. She was wearing jeans, holding a little girl, laughing with Clara. "Who's the child?" Alexander asked, his voice tight. Clara looked at him. "That's Hope." Alexander blinked. "Hope?" Clara nodded. "She's Eleanor's daughter." The room spun. "What? She had a daughter?" Alexander's voice cracked. Clara nodded. "Yes. She found out she was pregnant not long before she got really sick." "Why didn't she tell me?" he whispered. Clara sat down across from him. "She wanted to, but you were busy, always away. She thought the baby might keep you tied to a world you didn't want anymore. She was scared. Alexander looked down. Pain crawled up his throat. She didn't think I'd love them both. She wasn't sure you knew how, Clara said softly. That night, Alexander stayed in the guest room. He couldn't sleep. Early morning light filled the house. A small knock came on the door. "Come in," he said. A little girl peeked inside. She had long dark hair and Eleanor's eyes. "Hi," she said shyly. "I'm Hope." Alexander smiled weakly. "Hi, Hope." She came in slowly and sat on the bed. "Did you know my mommy?" she asked. Tears pricked his eyes. "Yes," he said. "I loved her very much." Later that evening, Clara read Hope a bedtime story. Alexander stood by the door, listening. Hope looked up. "Clara, who is that man?" Clara smiled gently. "He's someone very special, someone your mom wanted you to meet one day." Hope blinked. "Is he like a friend?" Clara looked toward Alexander. Maybe more than that. Alexander stood in the dark hallway, his chest heavy with guilt and something else. A tiny flicker of something he hadn't felt in years, hope. The next morning, Alexander walked into the kitchen. Clara was making pancakes. Hope sat at the table, humming. "Morning," Alexander said softly. Hope gave a shy smile. "You want pancakes too?" He nodded. "I'd love that." Clara didn't smile. "You're staying?" she asked. Alexander paused. "If that's okay." Clara shrugged. "It's not me you need to ask." Hope tilted her head. "Ask who?" Clara looked him in the eye. "Ask yourself. Why are you really here, Alexander?" Later that day, Clara handed him a small leather book. It was Eleanor's journal. "She wanted you to have this, but only after you met Hope." Alexander opened it slowly. "Some days, I wish he would just stop working, just for a moment, and see me. I think I'm pregnant. I'm scared. He's been gone for 3 weeks. Should I tell him? Will he be happy? I decided not to. I want to protect this part of me from disappointment." Alexander closed the book. His chest felt like it was breaking. That night, Alexander sat with Clara. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I should have been there." Clara didn't look at him. She cried every night. "You don't get to show up 5 years later and fix everything with sad eyes." "I'm not trying to fix anything," he said. "I just want to know her and know Hope." Clara stood up. "Well, knowing her comes with the truth, all of it." She handed him another envelope. "This one isn't from Eleanor. It's from someone else." The letter was from Dr. Naomi Renshaw, Eleanor's old doctor. Alexander's hands shook again as he read. Eleanor made difficult choices. She knew the cancer was aggressive, but she delayed treatment because of the pregnancy. She didn't want to risk the baby. She chose life for Hope. She knew what that meant. She told me not to tell you. She didn't want your pity, only your love, in her own quiet way. Alexander felt the world tilt again. "She died. To save her?" he asked. Clara nodded. "And now she's your responsibility if you're brave enough." That night, Alexander sat on the porch. Hope sat beside him, swinging her legs. "Do you miss her?" she asked. He nodded. "Every day." "Me too," she whispered. He looked at her. "You're really brave, you know that?" Hope smiled. "Clara says I'm like Mama, strong on the inside." Alexander smiled, then looked down. "But I don't know how to be a dad." Hope looked up at him. "That's okay," she said. "You can learn. I'm learning too." A few days later, a storm rolled in. The sky turned dark. Wind howled. Clara rushed to close the windows. We lose power during storms. Hope's scared of the dark. Alexander lit candles. He found Hope hiding in a blanket. He sat beside her. "Hey, it's okay. I'm here." She looked at him. "You'll stay? I'm not going anywhere." She reached out and held his hand. Outside, thunder roared, but inside, for the first time, there was peace. The next day, a knock came at the door. A tall man in a black coat stood outside. "I'm Richard Blake," he said. "I'm Eleanor's former lawyer." Alexander tensed. "I handled some private matters for her. I wasn't sure I'd find you here." He held out a brown folder. "She left something behind, for Hope, and for you." Alexander took it. "Why now?" Richard nodded to Clara. "She planned this carefully, everything timed to 5 years. Inside the folder was a will with one strange condition." Alexander read the words out loud. "Hope will inherit everything if Alexander spends 30 days with her before deciding her future." "What does that mean?" he asked. Richard replied, "It means Eleanor wanted you to choose, not with your money, but with your heart." Clara crossed her arms. "She didn't want you to buy your way out of guilt. She wanted you to feel what it's like to care." Alexander sighed. "I don't need her money. I just want to be there. If Hope wants me." Alexander had to return to the city for 1 day, just to close some deals, he told Hope. Her eyes fell. "You'll come back?" "Yes," he said. "I promise." She hugged him tightly. "You better. I don't trust people who break promises." His chest ached. Clara watched quietly. "You know if you don't return, she'll never forgive you." Alexander met her eyes. "I will return." But deep down, he feared something would pull him away again. Back in the city, Alexander sat at his office desk. Papers, phones, meetings. But his heart wasn't there. His assistant came in. "Sir, the London deal is falling apart. They want you to fly out tonight." Alexander looked at his watch. If he left, he might miss Hope's school recital tomorrow. He stood up. "Cancel everything. Tell them if they want the deal, they wait. I have somewhere more important to be." For the first time in years, he chose family over business. Hope stood on stage in a little blue dress. Her hands shook. She looked around. Then she saw him. Alexander in the front row, smiling proudly. She smiled back and sang. Her voice, soft and clear, filled the room. Clara wiped a tear. Alexander watched, his chest full. But after the show, as they walked outside, a man waited by the car, arms crossed. "Alexander Grayson?" he asked. "Yes, I'm David Langston, Eleanor's ex-fiancé." Alexander froze. David stepped closer. "We were engaged before she met you." Clara's eyes narrowed. Alexander kept calm. "Why are you here?" David looked at Hope. "Because I have questions, and maybe answers." He pulled out a photo, Eleanor holding a newborn, David standing beside her. "She told me the baby might be mine." Alexander's blood ran cold. "What did you say?" David didn't blink. "I want a paternity test." Back at the house, Clara paced the kitchen. "You should have told me," she hissed at David. "I found out just last year," he said. "She wrote me, before she died." Alexander stood still. "What if Hope isn't mine?" Clara snapped. "It doesn't matter. You're the one who's been here, who's showing up. She doesn't even know him." David looked down. "I'm not here to take her away. I need to know." Alexander's hands clenched. "Then we'll all know." The clinic was quiet, too quiet. Hope was playing with a toy bear in the waiting room. Alexander sat beside her. "Does it hurt?" she asked. "No, sweetheart. Just a cotton swab, like a tickle in your mouth." She smiled. "You'll be with me, always." The nurse came, took 3 samples, David, Alexander, Hope. Now they had to wait, and Alexander had never hated waiting so much. That night, Alexander had a dream. Eleanor stood in a white dress, holding baby Hope. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. She smiled. "Would you have listened?" He reached for her. "I'm sorry." She touched his face. "Then don't run away again." He woke up in tears, and for the first time, he said her name out loud in the dark. "Eleanor." The results arrived. Alexander opened the envelope slowly. Clara sat beside him. David leaned on the wall. He read the words once, then again. Hope's DNA matched. Alexander, not David, she was his daughter. David exhaled. Well, that answers that. Alexander didn't speak. He just stood and walked outside. The storm had passed, but inside him, one was just beginning. Alexander stared at the sky. He had longed for Hope to be his, but now that she was, something twisted inside him. Could he be a good father? Could he undo the past? Clara joined him. You look scared. I am. You should be, she said. It means you care now. Alexander looked at her. I can't fix the past. No, Clara replied. But you can fight for the future. David packed his bag the next day. He knelt by Hope and smiled. You've got a good man here, he said, and a great mom watching over you. Hope hugged him. Will I see you again? David smiled. Maybe, but your story is just beginning. He walked out the door, leaving silence behind. Alexander sat beside Hope and whispered, You're stuck with me now. She grinned. Good. That night, Hope hugged a raggedy doll. I like this one, she said. It smells like Mummy. She turned it upside down, and something fell out. A tiny folded paper. Eleanor's handwriting again. Clara gasped. Another letter? Alexander picked it up, heart pounding. It was short. If you found this, then he stayed. He didn't run. Tell him, I always believed he could be more than what the world saw. Alexander cried openly now. She had believed in him. All along. The next morning, Alexander stood outside with Hope. Do you know why I came here? He asked. She shook her head. I thought I was looking for truth, but really, I was looking for you. Hope took his hand. Then you found me. They looked at the sky, quiet, still, new, but far in the distance. Another secret was waiting. In Eleanor's journal, one final page no one had noticed yet. Clara sat on the porch, flipping through Eleanor's journal for the 100th time. Then she paused. Something was stitched inside the back cover. She carefully tugged the seam. A small folded page fell out. Her eyes widened. Alexander, you need to see this. He sat beside her and unfolded the page. It was written in Eleanor's careful, looping letters. If you've made it this far, then you chose to stay. Thank you. But I need you to know something even deeper. The letter continued. I never told you this, but I was once going to leave you. I had the bags packed. I was ready. I felt alone, even when you were in the room. Alexander's hands shook. But then I saw you one night, standing at the edge of the balcony. You looked so tired, so lost. You whispered, I don't know who I am anymore. I stayed because in that moment, I realized you weren't cold. You were hurting. I stayed because I loved you, flaws and all. Alexander dropped the page and fell to his knees. The weight of everything, 5 years of guilt, the daughter he didn't know, the love he lost, finally crushed him. He sobbed like a child. Clara knelt beside him, holding his shoulders. You don't have to carry it alone anymore, she said. I failed her. No, Clara said. She saw you, and she forgave you, even when you didn't ask. Hope peeked through the window, watching silently. Her tiny heart didn't understand the pain, but she felt its heaviness. That evening, Alexander sat on the porch alone. He spoke softly into the wind. Eleanor, I wish I had said I was proud of you. I wish I had listened more, stayed home more, looked at you when you needed me. I wasn't ready back then. I was chasing things that meant nothing. He touched the folded page. But I'm ready now, to be better, for hope, for the part of you still here. The wind rustled the trees, soft, like a whisper, and somehow it felt like she heard him. Hope ran into his arms the next morning. You're not leaving again, right? Never, he said. That was the old me. She smiled. Good, because I want pancakes. Clara laughed in the kitchen. Alexander stepped in, rolled up his sleeves. I'll make them. Clara blinked. You know how? No, he grinned. But I'll learn. The kitchen filled with laughter, flour, and burnt batter. It was messy, loud, perfect. And in that tiny house in Willow Creek, Alexander found the kind of wealth he never knew existed. A month had passed. Alexander had barely returned to the city. He spent every day in Willow Creek. He bought a small piece of land on the edge of town, on a little hill with a view of the lake. "This'll be our home," he told Hope. "You mean, for real?" she asked, wide-eyed. "For real." She smiled. "Can it be blue like Clara's house?" "Blue it is," he said, grinning. Back in the city, Alexander walked into a meeting. His partners looked surprised. "Gentlemen," he said, "I'm cutting back. I'll no longer be CEO." The room fell silent. "But you built this company," one said. "I did," Alexander nodded. "And now it's time I build something else. My life." He handed them a letter of transition. He walked out of that building lighter than ever. Some legacies were made of steel, others were made of love and time. One evening, Alexander sat with Clara on her porch. "Why did you stay all these years?" he asked. Clara shrugged. She needed someone, and after she passed, Hope needed someone too. Alexander nodded slowly. "I owe you more than I can say." Clara looked at him, her voice quiet. "Don't say it, just show it by being here, always." Alexander smiled. "I'm not going anywhere." Clara gave Alexander a wooden box. Inside were letters, dozens of them, Eleanor's letters, to Hope. She wrote one for every birthday, every moment she knew she'd miss, Clara said. Alexander held one with trembling fingers. It read, "For Hope on her 10th birthday." He looked at Clara. "She's turning 10 next month." Clara nodded. "Read it to her. She would have wanted that." The house was filled with balloons and laughter. Hope wore a crown and sparkles on her cheeks. Clara brought out the cake. Alexander carried the gift. Then he knelt beside her and opened the letter. Hope listened quietly as he read, "You're 10 today, sweet girl, and I hope you never stop asking questions or dancing in the rain. And if your daddy is with you, tell him this. I always knew he'd find his way home to you." Hope hugged him tightly. "I miss her. I do too." That night, Alexander stood by Eleanor's old photo. He lit a candle beside it. "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything, for our daughter, for your faith in me." He felt no more guilt, only love, and deep, deep peace. Behind him, Clara whispered, "She'd be proud of you." Alexander nodded. "I hope so." Alexander and Hope planted a garden behind the house. "Why flowers?" she asked. "They remind me of her," he said. "Beautiful, quiet, and full of color." Hope pointed to a small white flower. "I'll name this one, Mummy." He smiled. She'd like Tat. They worked in the dirt side by side, hands messy, hearts full. The garden grew, and so did they. One afternoon, Alexander found Clara sitting by the lake. He sat beside her. "I've been thinking." She looked over. He smiled nervously. "I know I've been a mess, but I'm not the same man. And Hope, she sees you as family already." Clara raised an eyebrow. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" He grinned. "I'm saying, maybe we don't have to do this alone anymore." Clara looked away, smiling softly. "Well, it's about time." Alexander began writing. Every night, he wrote letters to Hope, just like Eleanor had, for her birthdays, her teenage years, her wedding. He tucked them in a new wooden box, so when the day came and he could no longer read them himself, she would still hear his voice. "Dear Hope," he wrote, "never forget, I was once a man lost in the world, but you, my darling girl, were the map home." At the town courthouse, Alexander stood with Hope. "I want to do something today," he said. He handed a paper to the clerk. She read it aloud. "Request to legally change name from Hope Carter to Hope Grayson." Hope looked up. "Really?" Alexander smiled. "If that's what you want." She jumped into his arms. "Yes, that's what I want." The papers were signed. And just like that, they became something new, a family. Hope came running down the stairs, dusty and excited. "Daddy, there's a trunk in the attic." Alexander followed her up. They opened the old trunk, filled with Eleanor's belongings. Inside was a sealed envelope marked, "To be opened only if everything has changed." Alexander froze. Clara appeared in the doorway. She always planned for one last goodbye. With shaking hands, Alexander opened the letter. "If you're reading this, then I know two things. You stayed, and you've forgiven yourself. I'm so proud of you. But I have one final truth, one last thread to pull. The house you're living in wasn't just where I stayed when I left the city. It belonged to my mother, and the land it's built on. It's part of your family too." Alexander's brow furrowed. "Ask James. He knows the truth." James? His butler? Alexander returned to the city the next day and called James to the library. Eleanor left a message. She said, "You know something about the house in Willow Creek." James nodded, slowly sitting down. "Sir, I kept her secret, as I promised." He took a deep breath. "Eleanor's mother was your father's sister. She was your cousin." Alexander stared at him. "Wait, you mean?" "Yes, you and Eleanor were family, distant but connected. That house, she inherited it from your father's side, not hers." Alexander walked through the garden in Willow Creek with Hope. "So, we've always been tied to this place?" she asked. He nodded. "Yes, even before I knew it." She smiled. "Then Mommy brought us home, even when she was gone." He looked up at the sky. She always knew more than she said. Hope twirled around the flowers. "And now, we're growing something new." Alexander nodded, planting the final seed in the garden. Together. That night, Alexander sat alone on the porch. The moon glowed. He wrote his final letter for the day, then paused. He looked toward the stars and whispered, "Thank you, Eleanor, for the love, for the fight, for hope." He folded the letter. Hope peeked through the screen door. "Daddy?" "Yes, love." She stepped outside, holding a notebook of her own. "I started writing letters too." He smiled. "What will they be about?" She grinned. "About you and what happens next." But as Hope's letters begin to fill the box, and the past rests quietly under the soil they planted together, what hidden story lies buried in the roots of Willow Creek, just waiting for Hope to uncover next?